All right, Brian, thanks for joining me. Let's just start with a little bit of an origin story and sort of what led up to the idea of do a day.
Yeah. Um, well, so I have to say, most of my time is spent in my core industry of insurance. So if I head off into insurance, just bring me back to center. So yeah, I mean, putting the insurance stuff aside, I I grew up like a lot of Americans. I was overweight, very much so, and that all started in my childhood. Um, I was this like smiley, skinny little kid at like age 4 or 5, and my parents went through a pretty like dramatic divorce. There's certainly worse ones out there, but a lot of yelling and unhappiness. And I don't remember happiness being a thing in my childhood from my very first memories. And so, as the family was coming apart, I felt very unsettled. I was really little. I was the youngest of four, and my parents had their own stuff going on, so they weren't super keyed in on that. And it's not like I could communicate that effectively. So um, little kids just need to know that everything's going to be okay, and they need to feel comfort. It's like their basic human need at that point. And what's really good at doing that in the moment is food. Like Oreos are, like a security blanket, so to speak. So I just started eating, and it always made me feel better in the moment. But the problem is, whether or not I was physically full, I was never emotionally full because food does not solve emotional problems, but I had built that connection with it to do that. So that was sort of the definition of my life up through, I mean, early adulthood even, was I had a lot of anxiety that the sky was falling, that the world was coming apart, because that's the context I grew up in. And food was the thing I turned to solve for that. And it doesn't work, which means you just need more of it. And that's not going to work. So you just need more of it. And so you see a picture of me from age 5 to age 6, it's like two different kids. And the second kid is about the size of two kids. And that just kept going. So I lost 100 pounds between starting my junior year and senior year in high school. And I lost that through excessive exercise and restrictive eating, and it works really well. But I didn't do anything to address like the fundamental reason why I was overweight. And so I ended up gaining most of it back again. I never looked obese. I looked just American. Like as a kid, I definitely, people are like, oh, that's the fat kid. And I was called that, and that's how I was. But as I put it back on, I just carried it differently. And it didn't even strike me really that like, dude, you're like a big guy again. Um, but I had this wake up moment in 2011. I was married, still married. My son was about two and a half, and my wife got really sick, and just kept getting worse. And she had these like flare ups of pretty intense, like multi symptom situations, but they would go away after a couple days. And this one just kept getting worse. And, I took a few days off of work and thinking like, oh, I'll just, she was a stay at home mom. So taking care of my son, taking care of her. And like, by Monday, it'll all be good. But it just wasn't. And it kept escalating. And it got to a point where she had really wasted away, couldn't keep food down, couldn't get herself out of bed anymore. And my son was watching all of this happen, like watching his mother die in front of his eyes. And I was still this very anxiety ridden, reactive, like kind of get out of my way and let me fix everything because I'm the only one I can depend on person, which is shockingly not very pleasant to be around. Um, so I ended up getting a call from her doctor that she wasn't going to make it. He was really unkind in it. He was just like, yeah, there's nothing else we can do. I'm going on vacation. I'll check in when I'm back. And it was like, she's losing 2 pounds a day. She doesn't even weigh 100 pounds at this point. She's not going to be here when you get back. And he just goes, okay, we'll take her to the ER if you need to. And he hung up. Um, and I got off the phone. I walked into our bedroom, and our son was like standing at the foot of the bed looking at his mother. And it just all hit me hard. That was June 30th, 2011. I will never forget the day, the time, the setting, any of it. And that was like the gun in the face kind of moment that I needed to kick me into like, this has got to change. Um, I can't necessarily save her life. I can, support her in the journey that she's on, but I can't stop this part of the sky from falling. But that little boy needs me. And if I'm the only parent he's about to have, his chance at happiness is basically gone. And that's not what I want. Like, he deserves better. For any parents out there, like, that feeling you have for your child is really profound. And that's what I needed. So I woke up the next morning. I knew I was changed. I can't fully describe it, but I was like, this is something's different. And my wife is still alive. She went on her own journey and started to get on the other side of it. She still deals with lots of health issues, but she's still here. And my son is about to finish up high school next year, and things are really different. He's still plenty of days he's not happy. He's a teenager, it happens. But yeah, it's not at all what it was kind of foretold to be, because everything changed. And for me, that's when Do a Day was born. I use weight loss as a really good example of any of the challenges we face, because it's super tangible and super common. When I had 100 pounds to lose, I kept not starting or immediately failing when I had that pep talk with myself every morning and okay, today's the day. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, it was all shot, because 100 pounds is impossible. You cannot lose 100 pounds today. Other than severing parts of your body, you're not going to lose 100 pounds. So no matter what you do, no matter how hard you work at the gym, no matter how little you eat or what pills you take or whatever, you're not losing 100 pounds today. And so immediately you fail, and it's insurmountable and daunting. And that's what I was living with. And the truth is, all of the things we want to change, all of the things we want to achieve feel that way. But the reality is, you don't lose 100 pounds in a day. You don't climb to the top of a mountain in one step. You don't, save all the money you need to save for retirement in one day of work. Maybe, if you invest right, but that's a different story. But it was this sense of everything is too big and too impossible. And if you focus on that, immediately you're crushed and you give up. I went out and I had all this stuff I'm not supposed to eat. And so I ruined my diet. So I went home and ate a cheesecake and 3 pizzas and a 2-liter bottle of Coke. And I ruined everything. So, well, you didn't when you went out and you had French fries that you said you're not supposed to have, which we can discuss whether you're supposed to or not supposed to or whatever. But when you throw everything away because of a step that you made in the wrong direction in the past, that's when it falls apart. And that's how Do a Day started to come together, is yes, have your big goal, but what do you need to do in this moment towards that goal without judgment of failure before? But also, people are I had a good time at the gym. I worked really hard, so I rewarded myself with some cake. It's okay, that's great. Celebrate. But at the same time, you did take away from what you achieved instead of building on from it. And so let's build from our successes, win your way forward without punishing ourselves about what we didn't achieve before, or, oh my God, there's still so much to achieve tomorrow. So it's focusing in on the day, not grin and bear it, not just one day at a time, which is sort of just deal with it until it's done. This is much more purposeful. And it all sounds like small nuances, but it feels profoundly different. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the notion behind Do a Day, in a very long and rambly way.
That's good. And so do you think maybe the situation with your wife was so insurmountable, but you essentially had no sort of way except to think day to day is the only thing I sort of had to focus on? It sort of forced you to focus because it was something you could literally do nothing about.
Yeah. So my wife's situation is not to say it was separate from what I cared about or anything like that. It's not that. That was out of my my world, my purview, my control. I can influence it. I can be supportive, like I said, but if I keep focusing on that as the only thing that matters, and that is what what I'm trying to achieve is to have her be okay, I can't do that, except by coincidence and that my support was there, but other things changed as well. But going to get counseling for my anxiety so that it doesn't ruin my life, I can control that. And that will help me to show up differently for my wife, for my son, for myself. I was in a job situation that had been amazing and had turned really toxic and extremely political. And I felt really trapped. I can't change that company. That similar, I'm not going to make the CEO suddenly this great person who isn't just looking for yes men and stabbing people in the back and all. Like, I'm not going to change that, but I can change whether I work there. I can find another job and I can invest in myself so I'm a more attractive candidate so I can get another job. Like, that's in my purview. So it was sort of recognizing like I didn't need her situation. Like, it's not to wish it upon her, but I needed some kind of wake up call because I was asleep at the wheel, um, yet also really like angrily gripping the wheel at the same time. I don't know how you can do those two things at once, but I had sort of given up on actively living my life and was just sort of going through it. And that was toxic and unhelpful. And so my wife's situation was this blatant wake up call for me to then look at myself and what I needed to change. And I know you've read Do a Day. I don't know if you read the original release or the updated release, but um, I talk a lot about my son being the motivation. And that actually totally goes against one of the core tenets that I set out about motivation, that it has to be within you. And when I wrote the book, I hadn't fully come to grips with my own self-worth. And so I didn't feel that I was enough. Like, doing this for me was a good enough thing to do it for, that it had to be for him. And that was more profound, but he's not me. He's outside of me. I can't control him. He might think otherwise sometimes. Is like, Dad, you won't let me do this. But, he's not me. My feelings for him are me. My sense of myself in the world is me. But ultimately, like, if you don't value yourself, then these other things don't really add up, because you're like, why would you do them if you don't think you're worth it? So I spent a lot of time, after getting myself to a better place, I spent a lot of time just working on my self-worth. And it was actually, I was on a podcast and the host called me out for this. He's like, I want to challenge you. He's like, you said all this stuff, but then like, you're not even following your own rule. And that, it hit me hard. It's like, you're absolutely right. I think he thought I was going to start arguing with him, but no, like, he helped me see that I wasn't even fully in touch. It's an onion. Like, I needed another layer peeled and I wasn't ready for that yet.
Well, that was one of my questions I was going to ask. Was, you talked a lot about finding your why, and
Yeah.
has your why sort of shifted or changed any? And I guess in a way it kind of has.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always essentially been the same. I just didn't understand it completely. Like, the thing that was, I talked about, like, when you dig deep, it's the thing you're digging for. I think it's been the same. I just didn't fully get what I was looking at, if that makes sense. And I was seeing aspects of it and things about it that mattered. And that was enough in those moments. But there was something like, I had one more layer of the planet to dig down to get to the center of the earth. And that's why it's stuck. Like, my son, that's an amazing motivation, and he's living his own life, and like, he's going to be leaving the nest at some point soon. And so if I needed that sense of him every day, it's not like that goes away just because he doesn't live with me, but it changes. And this is why, like, a simpler way of looking at it, I simplify everything down to like the weight loss thing, because it is really like relatable for a lot of people. But this is not just about weight loss or fitness or health or whatever. Lots of people go through like, oh, it's beach season, or like, you got my high school reunion coming up, and I want people to be like, oh, wow. What happens when that's over? That motivation is gone, and that's why it's external and it's fleeting. It's not that my role as a parent and my love for my child is gone, but it's different. And I don't want to depend on the way that felt when he was 2 being the thing that drove me, because it changes. Um, yeah. So it's always ultimately been about me and my care for myself. I felt very uncomfortable with that, and I felt like, well, I must be an egotist if I am proud of myself. Like, great example is my body. The fat kid, like, very anti-physical movement, not very capable from a physical standpoint. And I was saying to my wife the other day, like, I actually don't care what I look like. And I'm getting older. My joints hurt. Like, I get injuries and all that. But if I look at what I've achieved, it blows my mind. Like, I ran a marathon. I've done all these 100-mile cycling things. A lot of stuff. I've like lost weight. I've kept it off for 15 years now since the second go round. Like really consistent. I'm really proud of that because that's not what was in the cards. And I did that, like I turned that around and I have reframed my life physically in a very different way. And it's amazing to me what my body's been able to do. And it's okay to be proud of myself for that. I'm not egotistical. I don't think like I'm the hottest man on the earth or any of like, and I don't care about that. It's just like, you know what, man? Like you did a great job with this. Good for you. Cause that's not what was in the cards. And you decided to find a new deck. And it's okay to feel that way and to feel like that shine from it and be proud of yourself. That's all right.
I think a lot of guys struggle with that idea of like, I can be the reason that I, I can be my why essentially.
It doesn't mean you're not there for someone else, and it doesn't mean they don't matter to you. You I think when I see people who like they are the center of their life and you feel it talking to them that they're very into themselves, I actually think it's the opposite. What I've tend to find out is those are very insecure people who are like over egging the outward pride in themselves because in reality inside they're not there. It's like the bully who picks on the other kids is because they're super insecure and they're like preemptively striking because they think the world actually is way better than them and that they're going to get trounced.
And we talked about, I know on LinkedIn about how I read the book in 2018 and read it recently, and it, different parts of it spoke differently to me. I was much more interested in the health than the diet in 2018. And the family portion spoke a lot more to me now, even though I did have a family in 2018. So, like, is there parts of the book that you feel now, like, even more strongly about, or like you feel like was even more true than you realized when you wrote it in 2018?
That's a really good question. So, I mean, one thing on the structure of it is like you're talking about the days, like instead of chapters, they're days. And what I try to do is use a different context for each one so that the person who's like, well, this is about weight loss. That's not my thing. This book doesn't apply. Like, these lessons aren't going to help me. It's like, okay, well, here's one about like struggles at work, and here's one about struggles as a father or as a husband or like these different situations where the exact same rules, the exact same approach is being applied, but to a totally different context in your life. I've written 5 books. 3 of them are business books. I edited a 4th one in that series. They're all actually the same. Like everything I do is self-help. Even people are like, wait, how'd you go from doing like these self-help books? I'm like, it's all self-help. So the self is like a company or an industry, but it's all like, what are the lessons and the kind of mindset and the approach? Now let's look at totally different contexts and see how those same things apply in, these very different kind of situations. So it's, I don't know that any of the situations hit more or less for me now because they're all like, the whole of my life. So they're all there for me, but I definitely like the methodology behind it. Like I, was talking about like getting another layer deeper. As I've gotten older, as I've gotten more um, aware and aligned with myself and like understanding myself, it has taken on a more powerful meaning. I go back to it myself. Like I wrote the thing, I shouldn't have to, but like, no, I open it up and I'm like, okay, these are the building blocks and like, let me re-inspire myself as to why that is and why I said it that way. Now, the problem I have is then I'm like, oh, I want to say more and I want to change. It's like, dude, things published, like, leave it alone. um, but it does like, it continues to be a thing for me. And I wrote it with the mindset that, it's the kind of book you could keep coming back to and just like you may not need to read all the situations again, but like have that reminder of like, I was talking to someone about Atomic Habits, which I shouldn't admit this. I actually really didn't like. I thought it was too simplistic. It's a great book, hugely successful and all that, but someone's like, yeah, I read it every year. And it like reminds me of what I need to do. And that's great. I think having that recentering reminder on it is actually really valuable. I don't know why the book didn't hit for me. It's like, and I know everybody loves it, it seems. Yeah, I felt like it was like, I got done with it. I was like, uh-huh. Yeah, like you're not telling me anything I didn't know. And I love like being blown away. by something and having that epiphany. And I just didn't get it out of that, which like, maybe I'm just not the target audience. And that's fine. I'm not knocking it. It's definitely helped a lot of people. That's awesome. I want to see people do better. And so if that's the thing that helps them there, fantastic.
Well, maybe you're already knee deep in all these habits, and so nothing of it was a surprise to you.
Maybe, or I'm just not aware enough yet. Maybe next year I'll be like, oh wow, I totally missed this.
Another layer of the onion.
Yeah. There's your hot take, though. You can put that out and be like, oh yeah.
I'll clip that, and yeah, Atomic Habit sucks. So that's the thumbnail. You had this, obviously this major event that sort of caused this epiphany and life change, but most people don't want to go through something like that, but to have a reason to change. It's so like, what advice do you have for people that don't have that dramatic of a situation in their life, but want, a vision on how to change and a reason to stick to and things like that?
Yeah. So for some people, they have those moments and it inspires a change, and that's great. I had someone on I used to do a podcast around Do a Day, and I had someone on who was a retired soldier. His convoy had been hit by an IED in Afghanistan and blown up, and he was left for dead on the side of the road. And he was talking about the aftermath, and I was expecting him to talk about that being his catalyst, and it wasn't. It was something that happened, 5 years later or something. So even if you have what seems like those moments, that doesn't mean it changes everything. And that's one of the things I realize is we shouldn't all have to have that, because that's terrible. It probably means there's something, some real trauma going on or some very serious loss. Wouldn't it be nice to not have to lose things to wake up to it? You hear a lot of parents who go through divorces, like, that's when I realized I need to be there for my kids more. It's like, yeah, that's tough. Like, would have been great if you had felt that way from the start and seen it, but it took you losing them to realize it. So the question is, how do we realize these things without the loss? Ultimately, and this might feel offensive to some people, but it's a choice. Everything about our life is a choice. That doesn't mean it's an easy choice. That doesn't mean it's an apparent choice, but it is a choice. We have agency to make those decisions. And part of it is recognizing and being willing to explore yourself and to figure out, like, what is it you actually care about? So I do a lot of leadership coaching, and there's this exercise that a mentor of mine gave me years ago where it's called must have, must not have. It's super simplistic, but oh my God, is it powerful. You just take a piece of paper, lay it out landscape, cut it in half, like draw a line down the middle. On one side must have, the other side must not have. And he was doing this with me in the context of career. So like, what must you have in your job or your career? What must you not have? And they're non-negotiable, and they can't just be the opposite of each other. Like, must make at least 100,000, must not make less than 100,000. Like, dude, you're cheating. But what it does is it forces you to really think. You're like, what does it actually care about? And why do I care about that? So things like this that force you to look at your value system, that force you to look at what I call sort of like your operating system, right? Like, what is it that leads you to behave the way you do, and why certain things appeal to you or not? Just explore that. Figure out what makes you tick. And I have no doubt the people who are listening to this are already open to that if they haven't already begun that. So the reality is, like, your audience is probably not the audience that needs to hear that, but they're also probably the people who would be most likely to take action on it. And I think that's really important, because this is for everybody, but not everybody is willing, or not everybody, it's like, I keep coming back to weight loss and food choices, but like, I'm vegan. I'm 100% vegan 90 something percent of the time. There are definitely moments where I make a different decision, and that's okay. I do love a cookie. You talk to people who are like, oh, if I could never eat chocolate cake again, I'd rather die. It's like, really? Like, honest to God, you would rather die than never have chocolate cake again, or a steak. Like, okay, have you thought about what that must be saying about your life? That, like, the only thing worth living for in your life is a steak? Like, it can be good, don't get me wrong, but really? It's like, so for those people who are going to make like a flippant comment and walk away, they're not ready for that. Doesn't mean they can't be, but they're not ready to make that kind of choice. I have a strong feeling that no one in this audience is living that way. Maybe they've said something like that and they're half joking or whatever, but I bet they'd also be like, well, let me think about that for a minute. What does that say about all the other things in my life? Like what offense did I just give to how much I put into creating this life around me that like, well, the only thing that's in it really is steak and the rest of it is worthless. So really focusing in on like what matters to you and why is that? And that's a choice. You don't need to be on the verge of or have lost everything to actually get there.
So I'd planned to ask about this anyway, so I'll just ask it now. I was going to ask if you're still doing the vegan diet. And obviously, the answer to that's yes. And so, who are some of your influences? Which authors or doctors and all that?
So I think my wife still thinks I have a complete crush and will do whatever I'm told by Rich Roll. I don't think that's true at all. But it was his like his autobiography um, that really sparked me to actually do the vegan thing. And that's actually it was now she bought me the book, so shame on her if she can't give me a hard time about it. Um, but it's called Finding Ultra. Great book. Um, yeah, it's an awesome book, and I listen to his podcast. And I have for years. Like it started in 2012. I think I started probably in 2013. I started listening. Um, it was reading his book where Do a Day got its name, and it was around going vegan. So that's always been a big influence to me. There have been people along the way that I think have been really insightful and inspiring. There's a Canadian guy named Di Manuel who's become a really good friend of mine. And he was certainly a huge inspiration and support to me early on. He's the one who, just being a good friend and mentor to me, he's the one who called out, like, I talk about lining up the dominoes and that the book ended up being the first domino. That was Di who gave me that mentality is like, I was away on business in San Francisco and like we had a catch up and he's like, think, what is it you're trying to achieve? And we talked about that and the kind of impact I wanted to have. And he's like, now start placing the dominoes behind that to know what's the first domino you need to tip over to get to that end state. And it was blatantly clear to me. I needed to put this whole, I already had the name Do a Day. I'm like, I need to put this in a book. Um, and I started writing it the next morning. Like I went for a run along the ocean in San Francisco. Like it's a good thing about being from the East Coast is I'll wake up super early there. So it's like 4 a.m. out run along the ocean. And on that run, I wrote in my head the whole structure for the book. Got on a long flight home, 6-7 hours, and wrote about 40% of it. I couldn't stop. I just like that was the shortest flight I've ever been on. I was when they're like, put your laptops away, and I was like, oh no, how did that happen? Yeah, so there's been people along the way, but I don't know that I'm relying on any one person anymore. And I used to search for that a lot more. Not to say there isn't a lot. I try to read a bunch, or I do a lot of audiobooks while I cycle in my basement, which is a really inspiring setting to but I'll put on books while I'm doing that. And so I'm just trying to like voraciously take in not just self-help, but also like really interesting business stories and kind of business history stories as well. Like I think there's a lot of lessons in that. And like I said, I see it all as self-help. So the trajectory of some famous person or business person or whatever, there's a lot of lessons in that for your life as well. So I just try to be a sponge all around and also recognize like that's not for me. There's people it's like too salesy, to like, I'll teach you how to make $1 million selling courses on how to make $1 million. Like that is not my thing. And when I start to smell that in someone's message, like I want nothing to do with it, even if they've got some good stuff. That should have been a short answer. As you're learning with me, nothing's a short answer.
Oh, that's good. But I went plant-based in probably 2013-ish. And the same, like I was like consuming all these books, and like I was reading Rich Roll's book and everything, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn and all these people.
Did you read Eat and Run?
I haven't read that.
Okay.
But I haven't read a book, related to that topic at this point, probably in 3 or 4 years, because I'm kind of like, okay, I got it. there's not a lot more to add to it. There's just sort of tiny nuances just to add. And I'm like, I can figure out the nuance and that'd be fun, but I've got the basic, more than the basic. I've got almost all the idea, I feel like, about all I need to keep going.
You've got your idea of it. And that's the point, is like all these diets and whatever, and then we fall off of them. It's because that wasn't sustainable for your life. And so like, if you figured out, and that's why I say like, I'm not 100% vegan 100% of the time, because I figured out like, and that's not me like sugarcoating that I actually like 2 out of 3 meals are not vegan. And I'm just sort of like using the moniker, like mostly I am vegan, and I'm vegan almost every day of my life since it sounds like you and I are the same timing, like late 2013. But I also recognize what I need to make that sustainable. And there's no book on like the Bryan veganism, same thing for you, is like, yeah, you got it. And that might be some interesting things. You pick up a recipe or like, oh, that's cool to hear their story, but it's not going to hit in the same way because you found, I mean, though you 13 years in now, like you found, assuming you're still doing it, like you found what your life is, and that's good.
A lot of like transformational benefits of like, changes and things like that. They're like, they're always presented almost like they're all positive, but you can't sort of take on all of this great stuff without giving up good stuff sometimes. It makes sense. And so I'm wondering if there's something that was essentially good in your life, it wasn't good enough once you sort of made this change.
Yeah. Clay, no one's ever asked me that. I don't think I've ever reflected on that. I mean, where I thought you were going to go is like, these are tough journeys. And whether it's because you're giving up something good or because you stumble or you have a bad day or, injuries, whatever it might be, like it's very easy to get turned off of the path because you get in your mind and you read a book or you hear a podcast, it's all positive and like, and if you don't get there, then you're a failure. So you have a bad day. It's not that straight line up. And I mean, this is the same thing I was talking about. It's like, kill it in the gym and then you get on the scale and it's like, oh, what the hell? Like, well, I'm not there. So it's a wobbly line for sure. As long as the average of that slope is up and to the right, you're okay. And that does mean, yeah, you might lose some things. Hey, friendships are one of those things where you might really appreciate someone's friendship and they're good fun and everything. And you start to realize like, I might have outgrown this person. They might be keeping me in the wrong version of me because that's the context I knew them in. Drinking, if that's something that was unhelpful for you and you decided like, that's not for me anymore. If you had your drinking buddies, like, doesn't mean don't be friends with them, but you at least should be aware of like the context I'm friends with them in. And maybe our friendship has now depended on is going out and getting blitzed. And maybe that's not the right thing for me. And you might wake up and realize like, I'm not friends with them anymore. And that's tough. There's going to be people in your life who you realize come with a different context than what you want your context to be. And yes, it's a positive to move past that and at least acknowledge like, that's a change. That's a loss. A part of you will feel that. They might feel that. They might lash out. They might talk negatively about you. You have to decide how you want to feel about that and what you're going to do about that. But I think I don't have that specific instance since this journey. I have certainly had things in my past that, I mean, at a really basic level, I don't drink. I haven't had any alcohol whatsoever since 2013. I wasn't a big drinker before that, except when I got out of college and was like single in the city, going out with my buddies. Like I didn't drink regularly, but regularly on Fridays and Saturdays, we'd pregame. And I did that because I was trying to meet girls and have fun. And what I realized is, after I met my wife, is before we were married, I went out with one of my friends who I used to go out with. I came back into town and, we went to a bar or club or whatever, both, I guess it was in one place. And I had a couple of drinks and it hit me in that moment is like, this is that version of me. I wasn't going there with any intention, but I felt it as like, okay, the next step is like, try to meet someone. And that's not where my life's at. And it's not to say that I was like, it was a terrible loss or anything, but I recognize like that was me. I enjoyed that time in my life and I'm stepping away from that. This is, long before any of the do a day journey that I wrote about since my wife got sick, but my whole life is that journey. And that was a piece of me that's like, yeah, it was fun, and like getting a little buzzed and laughing and like, yeah, that's awesome. And that's not who I am anymore. And there's certainly moments where I'm like, oh, it'd be great to just like kick back and whatever. And I miss that guy and we were good friends, but he's also like, he's got 3 little kids and he's married and lives in Texas now. And like, we wouldn't be hanging out anyway. Still love him. I miss the guy, but like, that was a different context for our life. And I do not want to fall back into that because I'm not trying to cheat on my wife. I'm not trying to go meet, some girls and what like that's not who I am and that's not what my values are anymore. And I don't want to do that to my body from the alcohol standpoint. I have a liver condition that is a non-condition unless I make it one. So I choose to live much cleaner. And you would never know if you looked at a blood test that there's anything going on there. But if I live differently, and certainly when I was still going out drinking stuff, my numbers showed it. So I've made different choices for myself. But yeah, it means like I don't have that part of my life anymore, but that's okay. I'd also probably fall asleep. If I had a drink, I'd just be out cold. Yeah.
I don't know if you've had this experience, but I've had friends that uh, have sort of outgrown, and then at some point, for lack of a better way to say it, they sort of catch up, and we reconnect, and sort of the friendship is of a different friendship than it was 4 or 5 years earlier, and it's not based around the same things it was then.
So I actually just had this conversation with my father, who's in a very prolonged retirement period. He just will not give up working, but he's worked so much for so many years. He really doesn't know who he is beyond that. He's been in the same career. He committed to it when he was 14. So, he's in his 80s now. So he really has no conception of himself other than that. And he is talking about that. And it's like physically, he's not in a place where he go take up golf or go ride a bike where like his body has shown what working that hard for, 60 something years, almost 70 years has done. Um, so I was talking to him about friends and he's like, oh, I don't really have any like really close friends, which is not true, but that's the mindset he was in when we were having that conversation. And I shared with him, I was like, 2 of my closest friends, I knew in high school. One of them, we did not get along at all in high school. He's arguably my closest friend today. And the other one, like we were friends in high school, it's all good. And then didn't really connect for 15, 20 years. And he's right up there. Different contexts, different lives. They've had different experiences. They've grown in different ways. And so have I. And I am so thankful. We do a guys lunch once a month, assuming we're all available. Like it gets canceled plenty, but I love that. And it's, the poor people at the restaurant are like, can we please have our table back? You guys are just continuing to talk. But yeah, I mean, you would never have seen that coming. And so I encouraged him. I'm like, think about that. Who are people from your past that you've lost touch with? Maybe try reconnecting. You might find you guys are in a different place in life today and you have a lot more to connect about. And you can say it's all them. Oh, they grew, they caught up to me, they grew. Like that could be true. Maybe there's some other things on your side. But either way, like you kind of rediscover a new version of friendship with someone where you have some baseline. And that's really nice. But you got to give that a shot.
I used to have this attitude kind of like, I grew up in a small town. I still live about 15 miles from that small town. And so I'm like, I didn't like to go home and like run into somebody from high school at the Walmart or whatever and be like, I don't want to talk about something that happened 25 years ago. But I realized I'm sort of trapping them in that idea of themselves and not letting them sort of be a different person than they were when they were 17 years old.
Yeah. Like they're in their 30s, 40s, whatever now too. So
Right.
yeah, there's other stuff going on for them as well.
Right. So I realized a lot of that was about me, not about, them. I'm projecting onto them. And
Yeah. they probably said the same thing about you. And they're like, oh my God, he's like a totally different person. So my thing is, my high school friends, anyone I went to high school with, still has this conception of me as the fat kid, even though the kid they graduated with weighs about the same as what I weigh now. And I was like lifting weights and I was really fit. But they knew me for so many years as the fat kid that every time I see them, they're like, oh my God, you look amazing. I was like, dude, I look the same as like literally my hair's, thinner and grayer, but otherwise I'm the same dude that you just don't think of me that way. So it's actually like, I don't mind running into them because I get this little ego boost. They're like, oh my God, look at you. But yeah, um, everyone's moved on, it's like go to a reunion and there's lots of storytelling and whatnot, but they have their lives too. I say it's like life is, we're all living the Truman Show, and it's our show and we're the star. And that's what's going on in everyone else's head. No matter how selfless you are, whatever, it's like you're living through the camera's your eyes. And so when we think like, oh my God, they're thinking this of me and they're thinking that, and we're like, dude, they're not thinking about you. Maybe a little bit, but like their whole world is not your show. It's their show. And so all of these overthinking and worrying that we do, it's natural, but let's just remind ourselves like they got their own stuff going on. And maybe they were gruff to you, not because of you. Maybe they've like, you don't know what's up in their life. So there's a show going on over there. It's a different channel. Just keep that in mind when you think like, oh my God, they're going to be this way, or why did they do that? Like maybe it's not about you.
Yeah, that's what I think one of the most beneficial things people can realize is sort of like that really nobody's paying attention to you, and that's very freeing. Like,
We all have broccoli in our teeth that no one's pointing out. And it's not because they did it on purpose so we'd look stupid. It's like they're sitting there realizing, like, I got something in my teeth. They didn't even see yours.
you know. Um, so what is something that's kind of that what if you change your mind about sort of, let's say when you wrote Do a Day that you feel a little differently about now?
Oh, um, well, I did have this whole looking forward section. And I don't know that I totally feel differently, but I did say, like, I didn't say I want to. I said, like, I'm going to do an Ironman triathlon. And the sun has not set on that. I thought it would have come sooner. I thought I would have done another marathon since then. It's so funny. People are like, "Oh, is you a marathoner?" I was like, "I've run one marathon." I don't know if that allows me to like use the general term, but I don't feel like I'm done with that. So there is still that. I definitely had a sense of like there's a lot of physical momentum at the time of Do a Day. Yeah, I had done that marathon and I kind of kept myself more or less marathon trained for a few years. So I could like go out and bust 10, 12 miles, like not a big deal. Now I'm like doing a mile and a half. I'm like, oh my God, am I done yet? I know I could go further. My mind is in a different place about the duration, but you train for that. Um, I had these expectations physically of what else I would achieve, and I haven't done that yet. So the difference today is I don't know that I will. I want to, but I didn't allow for the possibility that I wouldn't then. My context is different and my values are different a bit today around those things, at least. So the difference for me now is like I have more grace for the fact that what matters and what we achieve can change. That doesn't mean that, I'm not still really fit and I don't keep that important. It doesn't mean I wouldn't love to have that achievement. More than anything, I just want to get the Iron Man tattoo. But I could get that anyway, but that I'm not posing like that. So yeah, I know that's not quite what you were asking, but like I do feel differently in relation to some of those things that I was like very hard and fast, like this will happen. And if I say it otherwise, then it won't happen because I'll give myself an out, which is true. But it's more about recognizing like, well, is that what matters to me? Or like if I do that and I shut off the rest of my life to make that training work, or I end up with, I've had a lot of joint problems. Like if I end up, having to have a hip replacement and I can't go do the Ironman, like what have I gotten? So I think having a bit more nuance to what I decide to push myself on while recognizing like I'm still achieving and I'm still proud of myself. I would still love to do that. I hate swimming, so I'd say I'd love to do that, and maybe I would hate doing it, but I also am like, maybe I would end up loving swimming. I don't know. I hated running, and I really enjoy it. I wish I could go longer without questioning what I'm doing, but I will. Um, so yeah, I think it's less about like walking away from something that mattered as it is walking towards a maturing sense of values and interpretation of those values instead of being so strict with myself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and are you at peace with the idea that you might not accomplish this goal that you set, all those years ago?
I I think more than that is like I really would like to do another marathon for two reasons. One is marathon I did not go to plan at all. I had like a stomach bug that I thought I was just like it was nerves, but it wasn't. It was more than that. Um, which leaves the door open for whichever one I do next will probably be a personal best. So that's pretty cool. Like even though, it's been 11 years, like I'll probably still beat the 30 something year old version of myself. But the other reason is it was the training. I don't think I've ever had such like beautiful, peaceful, clear thinking as I did going out on I go out early morning, so like the world was not awake yet. And it's quiet and it's beautiful and it's peaceful. And when you run long distance, like you end up covering a lot of ground. And like I was running into towns and cities like I would only have ever driven to or maybe ridden my bike. And it was just a really cool experience. I miss that. So I would like to do that again, but I also have grace that like, and I may not, but that doesn't mean I can't just like enjoy running. I just may not do it, to build up to a marathon because it also kind of takes over your life. I know people like have full-time jobs and marathon train. I kind of struggle with that. Because I like my personalities, I go into it. Um, but we'll see. Yeah, but I'm not beating myself up over it. If I do another one, that's awesome. If I don't, that's okay. I just want to make sure I'm living my life as I wish to. And absolutely the same with the triathlon is like, I really do need to not work to do that because I want to, like, I would want to commit full time to that training and really getting the most out of it. But, I don't know that that's ever in the cards, and that's okay. If it is, that'd be pretty cool.
Well, there's so much optimization talk sort of at this point in social media where people give this impression at least that you should just dedicate every bit of your being to some goal, and if you don't get it, it's some sort of personal failure, and it's like, well, you set the goal, and like, what was the actual point of the goal? And if you sort of got the point without getting the goal, I mean, there's no reason that you shouldn't be satisfied or at peace with that.
Yeah. I mean, you'll notice it's like that old adage, the journey is the destination or whatever. It's like, it's not about actually finishing the thing. It's all and that's what I just described with the marathon. It wasn't about the marathon itself. It was like what I actually really loved was those runs to get ready for it. It's corny and everything, but there's a reason why people keep talking about it. And if I were to blindly push past what actually matters to just achieve it, that's the same person that I was so upset with when, I had that wake up call is like, this is the anxiety ridden guy who's like, I just have to solve everything, get out of my way. That's the same thing. Like, I just have to train like this and you don't understand. And I can't do any of these like, it's the same angry, insecure, anxiety ridden person that I don't want to ever live as again. So the difference today is like achieving those things must come through balance. And I want to genuinely enjoy what I'm doing. And when I say I want to train full time, if I do a triathlon, it's because I'm genuinely interested in that. And I would love to come out of it being like, I'm good at swimming because I've never been I was always in the beginner swimming class anytime. Like I could never graduate out. I believe I could do that. I need help. I need a coach. I need to try and work at it. But like, I'm interested in that. I'm not like, come hell or high water forcing it. I'm interested
Right.
in that. And that's a different kind of thing.
No, I love that answer. That's good. I think because there's too much weird obsession around goal and accomplishment, not enough about w- sort of the person you become trying to accomplish those things.
Yeah, don't destroy yourself in the like, then what good is it, you know? And that's what I had to do with the marathon not going the way I wanted it to. I should have finished around 3 hours, and I finished at 4:44:28, numbers I will never forget. So when any marathoner is like, "Oh, yeah, I don't remember my time," or "It's 2 something," I'm like, "No, no, no. They're lying to you, they didn't do it." Everyone, except for people who've done, like, 100 marathons, like, everybody knows what their time is. Um, I was, like, seriously depressed after that, because it was months and months of hard work, and I achieved so much, and it was really not just possible. It was like, I am definitely going to hit the number that when I started this, I was like, no way I'm going to be that fast. And I had done the training and gotten myself to that point where I was going to do it. And I was so proud of myself, and I worked so hard for so long, and it all fell apart. I finished. I walked some of it, and that was, that was difficult. I met an amazing guy along the way who we became friends and like supported each other. And that's beautiful. And I'm thankful for that. Shout out to Tyler Tolbert if he's listening. Um, but it didn't go the way I wanted it to. And I was so focused on that instead of recognizing the whole picture. So I got to that place, but yeah, in the moment, I was too focused on what the finish line and the what the readout on the clock was. Like, that's not why you did this, dude.
Bringing it back to we were talking about earlier, Rich Roll. I mean, and he talks about what wrecking in one of those Ultraman, and it being a pretty traumatic sort of experience for a while.
Do you know what he did on the back of that one?
Did he finish second after that, or is that?
So he talked about this in one particular episode of the show. He did not put this in his book. He's since added it, and he's talked about it. He fell off the wagon.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He went to the bar at the hotel, and had a couple of beers, and he felt such utter shame about that. He'd been sober for years and years, and that was a big part of his identity. Um, the way he talks about it is actually like really empowering, really beautiful, and that's that wobbly line, and that's what he realized is, it's not perfection, and he had a lot of eyes on him, and he hadn't yet had the social following that he has today, but he did feel this pressure, like, I can't be honest about my slip up. Um, so that's why I'll say, like, I'm 100% vegan 90 something percent of the time, and, um, I'm not gonna lie about that, and I don't need to be ashamed about that. I don't owe anyone my veganism but me. So, and if I were to have a drink, I I'm I don't want to, but if I did, like, that's for me. I don't owe anybody else me never drinking again. Nobody cares. I think people who drink heavily that go out with me do care because they notice. I don't say a word about it. They notice and they tend to comment about it, make a big thing. I don't care at all. I don't You drink if you want to. That's not my choice. But what I do has nothing to do with anybody else. But that takes some work. Again, it's like, dude, they're all living their own show. They're not focused on you unless you get them to focus on you.
Well, and I think back, similar to Rich Roll's story, your story about the marathon and the stomach bug. I mean, early on, you focus on the time being not what you want, but ultimately, that's a pretty good time for a guy dealing with a stomach bug. That
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
it's
And I almost stepped out. So I was like eyeing the medical tent, and I'm trying to make this decision. Like, am I foolish for continuing on? Like, how bad is this? Um, so yeah, I passed the tent. There were a few of them, so I kept having to make that decision and wondering, like, am I being pigheaded right now or stubborn, or can I actually, even if I'm walking part of it, can I do this? And yeah, you want to clock out, but I got through it for sure. And I oddly, like, I felt fine the next day, but I, I didn't feel fine the day before or the day of. But that's the way it goes. But I still finished it, still have a medal. I still ran quite a bit of it. Um, and I know I can do it again, just not today.
we talked about not being a straight line. All of this. Think, is there a period in your life where you sort of felt like you took a step back and had to reevaluate to get back on the path, more or less?
It's good timing for us to have this conversation because I'm just back on that path. Yeah, for unexplainable reasons, I don't know why. I said my weight's been like the same. I've been basically 180, give or take a pound or two, since the end of 2011. The only time I was off that was marathon training. It's really hard as a vegan person who does not eat a lot of fake stuff. It's really hard to get enough calories when you're doing the long runs. I mean, there are days I needed thousands and thousands of calories. And it's like, if I try to eat anything else, it's all coming out, not to get gross, but like, it's not easy. So I got down to close to around 170. I think actually it was as low as like 169. That's way too thin for me. I do not want to be that weight. I was close to 300 at my worst. So, it's like half the size. So basically 180 ever since. For whatever reason, up until about 3 months ago, I was like high 180s, 185 to 190. And I didn't understand why. Talked to my doctor about it. I'm like, I don't think I've done anything different. I don't understand it. But I also wasn't being honest with myself. I hadn't really changed what I ate. What I wasn't doing was feeling power in my workouts or even just the motivation to do them. Like I still worked out every day, but I didn't want to. And that's not like me. And I have a therapist. I talked to him about this. I was like, it's really disconcerting for me that I don't have the energy or the desire. I'm just going through the motions, which having read the book, that's where I was before that moment. Was like, I got on the elliptical and like, oh, after like watching a show or reading a magazine, like now it's just over. Like that's not working out, just being there until it's over. And I wake up early and it's like, it's hard to get out of bed to do something you don't want to do. And so I know I wasn't putting enough into it. And I actually don't know why it changed. I think just being aware of that and actually like having someone to talk to and to put words to it and to recognize that. And then remember I said it's a choice. I was choosing to not put energy into it. And I knew better. And I had those talks with myself every day, but I didn't want to admit it. And I didn't want to push. And I was like, well, this is good enough. And what does it matter? But I also was uncomfortable. It's not that I cared what the scale said or I thought I looked bad. My clothes were tighter and I was uncomfortable and I felt less energy and I felt worse. I'm like, maybe this is part of aging. I had every excuse in the book, but the reality is that's not the case. I am pretty consistently 177 right now, and I'm not fixated on my weight. I do monitor it, not because I'm worried about it, but I'm actually more worried about going too low. And so I'll eat more. But now it's like, doesn't matter what's going on. I'm pretty consistently under 180, but over 175. And that's great. That's where I should be. But more important than that is I actually have energy in my workouts. And I'm like, oh, what else could I do? Because I want to. So that's the difference. I allowed myself to sort of fall off that energy train and I knew it, but I didn't want to admit it. And it was in the course of admitting it, giving it a name and talking through it with someone that I sort of recommitted to myself. I don't know if that's always going to be the case, but I do know now, like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm not being honest with myself. So I know if I'm honest with myself, it's funny. Like I'm not consciously like, I'm not eating differently. I'm not doing different things when I work out, but it's just like that little switch that there's energy inside at that motivational level that's doing things differently and the results come really fast. And that's pretty powerful. So I think I needed that reminder. And we'll see. Hopefully that never happens again. But if it does, I have grace for myself that I can get it back on track, but I need to choose to do that.
And yeah, and like you said, you learned the biggest problem was not truly being honest with yourself.
Yeah, that's always the biggest problem. It's not about anybody else. It's ultimately like, and you know better, your body knows better, but like you try to hide it from yourself, you're just going to pay more.
So how does your do-a-day philosophy sort of work through your professional career? Like, how do you see it happening there?
Yeah. It's actually like really blatant in the business world. And there's sort of a resurgence of having conversations around do a day when COVID hit. because and right now there's a lot of chaos in this country, in the world. Chaos is like, it's another word for anxiety in a lot of ways, or it sparks anxiety. So I'm the CEO of an organization. It's it's one that I've been turning around and remaking because it needed to wake up. That's why I was brought in. Which means there's a lot of frustrations. There's a lot of things that aren't going right. I came into a lot of things that are unacceptable to me and were contributing to us moving in the wrong direction for our long-term viability. And I want all that fixed right now. Like, it doesn't feel good sitting with things that I think are killing the organization. And maybe I'm overstating some of that stuff, but that complacency is also part of why things got to where they were. So I have had to find more peace with the pace and scale of change framed by reality. So I made a choice not to clean house and have the people that have been there still be there by and large. Very, very few changes in the staff, only one that was by my hand. Um, that means things may move slower. I had a peer who walked into a similar situation. He's like, you have to fire everyone day one. You have to come in with your own people. I'm like, well, I'm a month on the job, so it's too late for that. But I don't agree with that. I would much rather inspire people to have those epiphanies and to be like, wow, we can achieve all this and get excited again because they've been there a long time. They've committed a lot. And so I made that choice, but it also means a lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety if things don't work out. Having to have these moments of like, do I just step in and do it myself? Or am I sitting here teaching someone to fish? And then I have to be patient that they're going to cast a lot of lines and they're going to come up with nothing or maybe a shoe or seaweed or whatever. And that's really tough. And so I've had to keep myself focused on what is it we're trying to achieve? What's the context around that? Are we making progress? Are we, we're not stepping to the summit right now, but are we moving forward on that path? And if we're on the wrong path, do we have eyes on how we're going to figure that out and get ourselves back and find a map? So it's been like a very conscious navigating through that. And that's the case in any business situation. Is like things aren't always going to go right. There's always fires to put out. There's always things that will drive you to be reactive. And again, it's choice of how you want to navigate through that. I've been really lucky in my career. I say lucky, but like I've also achieved this and earned it. But like I've led some pretty amazing organizations and gotten to work with incredible people. I've also had the joy of working with some pretty bad people. And all that, like, I'm not working alone. I did run my own thing for a while, and that's great too. But leading people changes how you navigate those tricky things. When I was by myself, like if I hit something tricky, first of all, it's probably my fault. And second of all, I have everything in front of me to change that and change it right now. That's not the case when you're leading people. You have to work in a way that also brings them along for the ride and makes for something sustainable. Because if I'm not there tomorrow, I don't want the place falling apart. I don't want to preside over the death of an organization that I thought was already dying. So it's someone outside, a coworker who used this phrase I feel like is offensive, but I hope not. But he's like, you never want to be pregnant with someone else's baby. Well, that's really interesting. But I didn't want that. But I also would hate to do all this stuff and then walk away and have the place die. And it's like, oh, so he actually sucked. Like, I don't want that either. Right. So I have had to use Do a Day to kind of navigate through that. And I always say, like, I'm unsatisfied with where we are and wish we were pushing harder, faster, and further. My team is probably feels like we've been pushing too hard, too fast, too far. A little bit. They're not quitting. So like people are here and generally our employee engagement scores are really high. Like it's actually generally positive, but I know they're pressed a bit to the point of discomfort, not terribly, but a little bit uncomfortable. It's very different for them. But they're a little uncomfortable. And my board is really happily in the middle. And I think that's exactly where it should be. Like, as a CEO, I should want us to do better and I should have a vision of what that looks like and want to move us there. The staff should feel pushed a little bit, not uncomfortably, not too much, but I don't want them complacent or just like thinking this is a paycheck that they can get regardless. Like, they need to care about where we're going and they should feel empowered and feel that they have agency in helping to move us there. And sometimes that's hard and that's okay. And the board does my evaluation and decides whether I keep my job. So yeah, I want them happy. So they're right there in the middle. I think that's where it should be. But I do have to keep very much in mind, like, yeah, you should feel a little bit uncomfortable, man. You should wish this was doing more, and you should have moments where your anxiety control is tested, because otherwise you're asleep at the wheel, or you've allowed the organization to be. But also, like, I don't want to be up at night worrying about this stuff. So I need to manage how I navigate those feelings. And that's, again, like, that's what Do a Day allows for.
Yeah. So that's good. So, last question. If you were writing a new chapter for Do a Day, that's not, what would that be?
Wow. I think that's like, you've had a few questions for me that I've never contemplated, definitely wasn't ready for. That's the hardest. Um, it's been almost a decade since I worked on the book. So I don't know that I have blatantly come across another situation that I would make, like these days, these chapters, because I have been living like it's the same lesson and I'm applying it to the same thing. So I might have some different examples to put into it, but I don't know that I would necessarily have another chapter. Um, I went on to write a book about relationships and tough relationships, and my marriage is a piece of that. Um, I think every marriage, except the ones on TV and in movies, are pieces of that. And that could be a chapter for sure. I think a lot of people would feel that way, but that's not a chapter. That's a book, because there's a lot. It's not just about Do a Day. Like, there's another person in that. So there is a lot more about how you relate to people and the choices you make around that. And to me, like, you shouldn't just read the relationship one. You should read Do a Day too, because it helps you figure out how you exist in the world. And that definitely impacts how people receive you. Um, but yeah, if anything, I think marriages are really tricky, very complex things with or without kids. And I think we could all use thoughts on how to navigate that. The one thing is, like, there are some marriages that shouldn't be, and there are some marriages that could be, but not the way they are. And there are some that should be, and you got all the right ingredients, and you guys need to, need to come together and make that dish in the kitchen. Um, it's it's not my place to say, like, you should work on this no matter what. And, like, no, there's some that really shouldn't be, and maybe it's not safe. So there'd be a heck of a lot of disclaiming. And I have to do that in the relationship one. I'm like, listen, if you're with someone who's abusive, if it's, dangerous, like, I'm not saying, like, well, just try to be a kinder person to them and then maybe it'll all be okay. Um, there are relationships that should not be. And that's also why you need Do a Day, is like, if you don't understand yourself, you will allow yourself to keep, like, a magnet going back to these places that are actually really dangerous and harmful for you. So I think it would be that, but I don't know.
I like that idea of kind of Do a Day kind of about yourself, and obviously a relationship bookend that, because in some ways that's sort of all life is you and your relationships,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but that was a good question. I don't know, like, if you had sent that to me ahead of time, I don't know that I'd have an answer for you either. And I just hope my wife doesn't listen to this and, like, what do you mean?
Right.
But that's a whole other podcast. Yeah, I don't know. It's really, like, that question's I got to Do a day that question, because otherwise it's going to bug me for a few days. So I got to let that go. But interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so I can tell you, like I tell clients at work, think about that for a while and just get back, and you can email me the answer. So I can always put that in the newsletter for everybody to read.
We'll have a 10-year anniversary version of Do a Day with the Clay-inspired new chapter in it.
I like it. So I really appreciate this, man. Like, I'm glad we finally got together.
Yeah, and I mean, you did reach out last year, and I don't know how that all fell apart, but yeah, it kind of randomly all came back together, and I'm so thankful for it, because you put a lot of stuff in my mind. So hopefully, same for the listeners.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So your website's still the good spot to see everything that you do.
Yeah. So there's if you can spell my name, it's bryanfalchuk.com. And that's I got like I've done a bunch of TED Talks and or TEDx talks, not TED Talks, including one on Do a Day. That was my first one. So for people who haven't read the book, that's a under 15-minute ish way to get the gist of it. And you can see lots of stuff about me there. And I'm also hyperactive on LinkedIn, so that's the other way you can find me. I'm not on Facebook or Twitter. I purposely got off both of those, but website's always good.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, I'll put all that in the newsletter and the YouTube description and all that, and you guys can find you there.
Thank you for having me on. It's really, really enjoyable.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. All right, man. Well, let's keep in touch, and I'll hopefully see you around.
Sounds good, Clay. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.